Okay. So, ma'am, सर ये हमिंग का साउंड आ रहा है. Kiran, stop presenting. Stop presenting, Kiran.
Anymore. India, the country of youngsters, having the world's largest youth population. The country is known for its human resources, as majority of its population is young. We have in India almost 65% population belonging to younger generation, out of which only 10% young population has access to college education. Popular academic disciplines in our country are engineering, medical, basic sciences, law, business studies and economics, management, social sciences, and humanities and languages. A total of 37,204 colleges, 789 universities, and 11,443 standalone institutions are providing higher education in India. Despite having such a large population qualified as doctors, engineers, scientists, and management professionals, the country still confronts the issues of unemployment. As per the latest estimates, only 7% professionals in India are employable. Because of this, professional distress is having a heyday in India. Younger generation is under distress and they feel immense social pressure.
Hello.
Hello. Yes, madam. I can hear you.
যেহেতু রেকগনিশন 2011 এর সময় হয়নি ইন্ডিয়াতে পরে হলো যেহেতু ওদের কোনো রকমের প্রিভিয়াস ডেটা কিছু
Urmi madam, would you like to convey something? Do you want to say something?
There are technical issues. Text message I am sitting on that.
Abraham, can you hear me? Not now, just on the on our communication, like on the video. Am I audible? I have no indication of that.
Ma'am, you are audible, and I request the participants not to present anything as of now.
Yes, and if
Rajiv
Robin
Arora
could be
ji.
stand by to give
Yeah,
me
Robin.
support.
Robin. Yes, madam. You just
Okay, Robin, I hope has my number because after getting so many people online, I don't want it to be missed.
Madam, actually,
Okay?
you don't
If you
need to
could
be on
just help
phone.
me with this.
Madam,
Okay,
you
thank
don't
you.
need to be on
Thank you.
phone. You just instruct the way you are saying. You be on the. You just say that Robin, please run the slide, etc. So we will do that.
Hello? Yes. No, I am not. I am not. I, I am using the Bluetooth. Okay. Okay, let me just try to reconnect with the JVM. No, but it shows connected. I don't know why. It shows connected at my end. I don't hear you through the speaker. Okay.
Ma'am, here?
No, very faint. I am able to see my image, but I cannot hear anybody else.
Still you're not able to hear anymore, ma'am? Hello? Urmi ma'am, you're still not able to hear anyone?
I'm not able to hear anything. My mic and this thing is functional.
Hello, Urmi ma'am.
Yes.
I tried to connect you to the meet. Like, it would be very much feasible. Like, if you can, like, try for because we are able to hear you, but you are.
I'm not able to. Okay, I will log out and I will just come back.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes, sure.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
नमस्कार। चीन के वुहान शहर से निकली कोविड
India, the country of youngsters, having the world's largest youth population. The country is known for its human resources, as majority of its population is young. We have in India almost 65% population belonging to younger generation, out of which only 10% young population has access to college education. Popular academic disciplines in our country are engineering, medical, basic sciences, law, business studies and economics, management, social sciences, and humanities and languages.
Hello?
A total of 37,204 colleges, 789 universities, and 11,443 standalone institutions are providing higher education in India. Despite having such a large population qualified as doctors, engineers, scientists, and management professionals, the country still confronts the issues of unemployment. As per the latest estimates, only 7% professionals in India are employable. Because of this, professional distress is having a heyday in India. Younger generation is under distress and they feel immense social pressure for having a matching job which they are unable to find. Because of manifold social problems, suicides and crimes are increasing like never before. Professionally qualified younger people undergo mental problems arising out of not having proper job satisfaction. Dearth of real professional help aggravates the issue even further. Who will come forward and what can be the answers to these real questions? Do you know the problems that we face today as a society? Well, you should know.
Hello?
Aged are without any
Hello?
institutional care.
Yeah.
Youths are suffering from unemployment and associated problems.
Am I audible now?
Children.
Yes, you are very much audible.
Okay, thank you. So let me have an indication as we begin.
Of course.
Yeah.
I will properly read your profile. Will welcome you, announce you.
Okay, fine. I can hear you now.
Yeah. Very soon we are going to start. Please mute your mic. Please mute your mic. Robin sir, you can mute the people who are there. Not muted.
Yeah, okay, sir.
તમે કેમ નથી દેખાતા
Hello.
Hello.
All are requested to mute their audience. All the participants are requested to mute their audience so that whatever the expert speaker is speaking about, that will be clearly audible to each one of us. And also, if you put off your videos, that will also help the proper transition of data, and that will help us in conducting this webinar. Also, you are requested not to present or not to start sharing your screen. Thank you. Ashish Wala and Rajni Tirki, you are requested to put your video off.
चालू तो होगा हिंडूल रहा था ये हिंडूल रहा सब चालू तो होगा
अभी क्या पसंद
कितना बजे स्टार्ट
Urvi ma'am, we are just waiting for the principal to arrive, and within 5 minutes we'll start.
No problem. I'm here.
माइक्रोफोन
Okay. Okay. I see. Settle it. এটা কবে দিয়েছিল একটু হচ্ছে 2006
नमस्कार। चीन के वुहान शहर से निकली कोविड-19 बीमारी जब वैश्विक महामारी के रूप में घोषित हो गई तो पूरे विश्व के साथ भारत भी अछूता न रहा। भारत के साथ साथ भोपाल में भी इसका असर भयानक था। द भोपाल स्कूल ऑफ सोशल साइंसेस मध्य भारत में झीलों की नगरी भोपाल का प्रसिद्ध शैक्षणिक संस्थान है। पूरी दुनिया जब वैश्विक महामारी कोविड-19 के कहर से जूझ रही थी, ऐसे में भोपाल शहर भी अछूता न रहा। इस संकट भरी परिस्थितियों में आशा की उजली किरण बनकर जरूरतमंदों और कमजोर वर्ग का सहारा बनने के लिए BSSS ने प्रदेश सरकार के साथ मिलकर मानवीय सेवा और राहत कार्यों के लिए कदम बढ़ाए। राहत कार्य कार्यक्रम का शुभारंभ कॉलेज के चेयरमैन आर्च बिशप डॉक्टर लियो कॉर्नेलियो SVD ने किया।
मुझे बहुत ही खुशी है कि BSS अनेक रीति से विशेषकर हमारे युवा लोग युवा युवतियाँ इस काम में जब अपने आप को ऑक्यूपाई होते हैं तो उसमें तसल्ली होती है, आंतरिक खुशी होती है। They are contented. Otherwise, their energies they would spend for something which may not be of so much use. दूसरों के लिए होती है। और सबसे महत्वपूर्ण बात है हमारी युवा युवतियों को ये बात सीखना और इस प्रकार ओरिएंट होना बहुत ही आवश्यक है। कॉलेज के बच्चों को, कॉलेज के लड़कियों को यदि इस प्रकार का ओरिएंटेशन मिले, आगे चलकर वे सच में समाज के खंभे बन जाएंगे, समाज की मदद करेंगे, समाज की भलाई करेंगे।
कोरोना वायरस का कहर और साथ में लॉकडाउन, गरीब दलित का वह बेहद बुरा हाल, फिर भी सभी की भूख कैसे मिटती मन में आया। कहीं अजीब अनोखा मंजर, भूख का विकृत रूप, जरूरतमंदों का समंदर कोरोना को बौना न बना दे और हरा दे। प्रिंसिपल डॉक्टर फादर जॉन पीजे ने राहत कार्यों के लिए 9 सदस्यों की एक टास्क फोर्स टीम गठित की, जिसमें कॉलेज का सोशल वर्क डिपार्टमेंट, चाइल्ड लाइन ब्यूरो और साथ ही कुछ सक्रिय कार्यकर्ताओं को शामिल किया। इस टास्क फोर्स टीम ने बाग सेवनिया पुलिस स्टेशन के अधिकारियों को भी सुरक्षात्मक उपायों से लैस कर कार्य की शुरुआत की।
For me, to serve humanity is my call, my vocation, my mission, and my life. Mr. Kamal, the BSSS Childline Nodal City Coordinator, was out there in the field from day one.
How?
And
Thank you.
he is a family man. Then I quizzed myself and asked, if he could,
Please do not share your screen.
why not we, the religious?
BSSS देव आहारम के माध्यम से हमने प्रवासी मजदूरों, झुग्गीवासियों और अन्य जरूरतमंद लोगों के लिए भोजन के पैकेट्स बनाने के लिए कॉलेज की ही पुष्पा गर्ल्स हॉस्टल में रसोई स्थापित की और औसतन प्रतिदिन 600 लोगों के लिए पौष्टिक भोजन बनाकर वितरित किया। हमारी वितरण गतिविधियां 2 अप्रैल 2020 से शुरू हुई। यह वितरण गतिविधि 20 अप्रैल 2020 को समाप्त की। कोरोना के संकट काल में लॉकडाउन के चलते प्रवासी श्रमिक बेहद परेशान थे। ऐसे में कॉलेज ने झुग्गीवासियों, प्रवासी मजदूरों और भोपाल शहर के आसपास अन्य जरूरतमंदों को अनाज के बैग्स बनाकर वितरण की योजना बनाई।
खाद्यान्न का वितरण बेसस कॉलेज भोपाल की ओर से किया जा रहा है। जोन क्रमांक 14 नगर निगम भोपाल की ओर से बेसस कॉलेज भोपाल को बहुत बहुत शुभकामनाएं, मंगल कामनाएं।
BSSS ने इस वितरण कार्य में आर्च डायसिस ऑफ भोपाल, DB ग्रुप, आर्च डायसिजन सोशल सर्विस सोसाइटी और मध्य प्रदेश समाज सेवा संस्थान जैसे विभिन्न एजेंसियों के साथ इस गतिविधि का संचालन किया। अब तक हम शहर में और आसपास के जरूरतमंदों को 1000 से अधिक ड्राई राशन किट वितरित कर चुके थे।
आर्चडायसिस भोपाल और BSS भोपाल ने जिस प्रकार से क्षेत्र की जनता की सेवा की है, उन पीड़ित मानवता की सेवा की है, उन गरीबों की सेवा की है जो वास्तव में जरूरतमंद थे और इस महामारी में लॉकडाउन के चलते अपने अपने घरों में सिमट गए थे। जो ऐसे लोग जिनके घरों में रोज की कमाई से रोज खाना बनता था, ऐसे गरीबों को भोजन उपलब्ध कराना, राशन उपलब्ध कराना और साथ ही साथ निगम प्रशासन के साथ मिलकर ऐसे लोगों की सहयोग करने का काम इन संस्थाओं ने किया है।
जहां कोविड-19 ने पूरे विश्व को एकता के बंधन में बांधा, वहीं घरों में रहते हुए लोगों की मनोवैज्ञानिक परेशानियों और घरेलू हिंसा से ग्रसित होने की घटनाओं में खासी बढ़ोतरी हुई। यह देखते हुए कॉलेज ने मानसिक स्वास्थ्य के साथ मनोवैज्ञानिक समस्याओं से निजात पाने के लिए और छात्रों की भलाई के लिए 24 घंटे की हेल्पलाइन स्थापित की।
परामर्श एक ऐसी प्रक्रिया है जिसमें परामर्श प्रार्थी को अपने जीवन में निर्णय लेने में मदद मिलती है। ये निर्णय जो है वो अकादमिक हो सकते हैं, संवेगात्मक हो सकते हैं और अंतर्वैयक्तिक भी हो सकते हैं। आज के इस कठिन दौर में भी छात्र हित को ध्यान में रखते हुए परामर्शदाताओं के साथ संपर्क साधने की सुविधा कॉलेज की वेबसाइट के माध्यम से उपलब्ध है और इस प्रक्रिया के माध्यम से अनेकों छात्र और
Sound will not be audible right now, don't worry. this is a promo video only. Ibrahim sir. Ibrahim sir. हाँ 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 अच्छा ओके ओके कर दे स्टार्ट फिर ओके ठीक Hello. Can technical team confirm that I am audible?
Yep, audible, sir.
Thank you very much. So, good evening to each and every one of you who is joined here to attend the international webinar on contemporary discourse on social issues of development, perspectives post-COVID-19, which is being hosted by the Department of Social Work at the Bhopal School of Social Sciences. Myself, Dr. Ritvik J. Gandhe, Assistant Professor, Department of Social Work, will be hosting this event of today, this evening. As you are aware, the department is conducting this webinar in the series. This is the first series of this particular webinar series. Today, we are going to have two eminent speakers among us who will be putting their perspectives on the issues of development chosen by them post-COVID-19 outbreak. Before I formally begin, I would like to instruct few words of caution for the participants in order to ensure the smooth functioning of the webinar. Since the webinar is being hosted through Google Meet, all participants are hereby requested to keep their audio in the mute mode. Because when we really unmute our audio, the surround sounds of you, it is getting captured and it creates a lot of disturbances when we actually hear to the resource person. So for the benefit of all of us, it is advisable that we keep our audio in the mute mode. At the same time, if we keep our videos off, that will also add to the quality of the transmission which is going to happen through this Google Meet, which will add value to the experience of this webinar. Oftentimes, we are getting outside, we are doing certain other works, and that is all captured when we keep our video on. So therefore, all participants are requested, unless otherwise required, keep their audio and videos off so that we can have a better experience of this particular webinar and we can learn more and more effectively from our resource person. At the same time, I would also like to tell you that keep a track on the chat box, which is mentioned. If you are operating through mobile phone, in between you can find the chat box on the Google Meet, or else if you are connected us through the YouTube, you will have the chat box in the YouTube also. In the comment section, you can see all the feedback forms, necessary attendance sheets, etc. will be shared to you electronically on YouTube comment section, at the same time in Google Meet in the chat box. So the feedback and the attendance will be circulated through the chat box and the comment section on Google Meet and YouTube respectively at the end of the speaker, at the end of the second speaker. At the same time, if you have any comments or any suggestions, you can always ask your questions through the chat box. The comments and suggestions and questions mentioned on the YouTube comment section will not be taken for the question and answer session. I repeat, the questions, suggestions, and comments on the YouTube comment section with these formal instructions. I hope I have made my point very clearly, and for all the comments and queries, you can use the chat box of the Google Meet, and the comments in the YouTube section will not be entertained because it practically cannot. And keep your audios and videos off for the better experience. With these words of instructions, it is my honor and privilege to invite the head of the Department of the Social Work, Abraham K. Varghese, Professor Abraham, to really join us and discuss about the motives, objectives, and his inaugural address. Abraham sir. Over to Abraham sir.
Good evening to all. Greetings from the Department of Social Work. It's me immense pleasure to welcome the host person and participants to the first series of international webinar on contemporary discourse on social issues of development, perspectives post-COVID-19. Department of Social Work has planned and being organized this webinar for the benefit of students, academics, scholars, thinkers, and interested participants. From being unlocked to being locked down, the pandemic discourse has enabled us to see a life through a small lens of epiphany, that wherever we go or whatever we do, one day we all are answerable. In fact, pandemic has given the real meaning of social equity, that is, so rich or poor, Indian or African, male or female, everyone was going through the same feeling of fear. As we are slowly moving towards the normality of the life, we realize that it's far from being that the role of social workers at this junction of time is very crucial. Hence, it is essential to configure ourselves to adapt and get ready to serve the society as professionals. So BSS being a prime educational hub in the city of Bhopal, known for its academic culture, is fulfilling its aim, that is towards a better world. Department of Social Work, since its establishment in the year of 2000, has been significantly contributed to fulfill the vision of institute. We remember the support of the college management, professors, alumni, student community, and partner organizations whose input made this department to be at the top in central India for rendering best social work education. In the recent ranking of Education World India Private Autonomous Colleges ranking 2020-21, BS has become the first best college, autonomous college in Madhya Pradesh. Also, under the India Today ranking, Department of Social Work achieved the first position from all over India and first and only institute from Madhya Pradesh state. Now we are pleased to have, we are really happy to have respected resource persons, Urmi Madam and Professor David H. Mold. I would not speak much about the resource person because the host, Professor Prithvi J. Gandhe, would be presenting the profile of our both resource persons. Behalf of the BSSS College Management, Principal, Vice Principal, and the social work family, I wholeheartedly welcome our resource persons, respected Urmi Madam and David H. Mold. I would like to welcome and invite all the participants from across the country and overseas. We have academicians, students, scholars, researchers, and development professionals. We are so happy to have you all on this virtual platform, and I wish you all the best once again on behalf of the college and the Department of Social Work. I invite you all and wish you all the best for this session. Over to Dr. Prithvi J. Gandhi. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abraham sir. I now request our technical team to start showing the presentation of Urmi Madam while I read her profile. Let us know about our expert speaker. It is my honor and privilege to really introduce Presidential Awardee, well-known social activist Urmi Basuji to all of you. Most of you are well aware of her, but for the benefit of the others, let me take the honor and privilege to read her bio. Born and raised in a family of medical professionals in Kolkata, India, Urmi Basu received her primary and secondary education in the Kolkata city. On completion of her first degree in sociology, Urmi moved to take her master's in social work at the prestigious Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. During her training, she had the opportunity to work in the first cell set up for women in distress by the Mumbai Police Department. She also worked as a relief worker during the Bhopal gas leak tragedy in December 1984, which left a lasting impression on her mind about the need to be prepared for disasters, both natural and man-made. After 15 years of professional work, Urmi set up a small non-profit named New Light in Kolkata in 2000 with a seed money as little as rupees 10,000 along with two other young people from the Kalighat Red Light District. The mission of the organization is to promote gender equality and fight violence and abuse girl children and young people. To a couple of thousand people. The organization also works to fight against child prostitution and trafficking for the purpose of sex trade, child labor, and bonded labor. Urmi has been a part of targeted intervention programs for victims of HIV/AIDS, transsexual, and transgender people. She lives in Kolkata, India, and fights for social justice for the marginalized community every day of her life. In her own words, her greatest moment of joy was when she was chosen as a recipient of a blessing from His Holiness the Dalai Lama under the title Unsung Heroes of Compassion 2009 on the 26th of April 2009 in San Francisco for her work that promotes compassion and peace. In 2019, it was a distinguished honor for all associated with Urmi Madam as Ms. Urmi Basu received the prestigious Nari Shakti Puraskar from His Excellency, the President of India, Honorable Shri Ram Nath Kovind ji, through the Ministry of Women and Child Development, Government of India. In recognition of New Light Kolkata's contribution to women's empowerment on the occasion of International Women's Day. With these small little words of her introduction, there is a long list also of her awards. Let me now invite our speaker of the day, Madam Urmi Basu. Madam, it's our great honor and privilege that you are among us today, and I now hand over the mic to you to carry on with your speech. Urmi, Madam.
Namaskar. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, the head of the department, Abraham Burgess, my recent associate in this endeavor, Ritwik, Sir Uman, and also Robin Raj, who's been helping me with the technical side of this presentation. It's a distinguished honor here talking about the issues of social development in the perspective.
Ashish Balaji, put your Ashish Balaji, put. Yes, madam, carry on. Carry on. Carry on. Carry on. Madam. Yeah. I would request the technical admin to mute these people, such people. Madam, carry on.
I'm delighted to be addressing the students of Bhopal School of Social Sciences. As mentioned in my brief background history, I was there as a young student volunteering after the Bhopal gas leak tragedy. And we have very intense and dark memories from that time. It seems that in all these years, little has changed. I feel we continue to be just as unprepared for natural and man-made disasters as we were then, as we are now. I, as a professional, and I would prefer to call myself an activist. I'm not an academician, so my work has mainly been the grassroots. I've been intensely involved in the lives and livelihood processes of marginalized communities. I get this sense that we continue as social workers and activists to engage different institutions of governance to provide a better opportunity, better livelihood for the people. But we seem to be failing to convince them of the real purpose. Without involving everybody in our society, it would be impossible to move forward. No section of society can move forward if everybody is not together in it. It would be foolish on our part to sit in rooms and boardrooms and meeting rooms discussing what we have achieved in terms of numbers if those numbers are not increasing. I'm talking here of about 3 million women engaged in 3 million is 30 lakhs of people. in our representation, out of which it seems there are 40% children and young people involved in this trade. It's a trade that destroys humanity. We have often termed prostitution as the oldest profession of civilization. I personally insist it is the oldest form of exploitation. It's a situation when one person benefits from selling the body of another. In my experience of having worked with women in prostitution for the last 20 years, I have rarely come across a person who has said that I have come here, I have chosen to do this work because I find it adds value to my life. It's an existence that dehumanizes people. Of these 40% of young people who are engaged in prostitution, or as the figures tell us, we know that majority of them have come from places and spaces that are steeped in poverty. How can we talk about a more equitable society unless we are ready to address the fact that we have a problem with poverty in this country? With our 1.3 billion population, only a fraction and a fragment of it can compete with what the Western world takes for granted. What is guaranteed to them, to a young child born in the developed world, is something that very few people, very few children can aspire to receive in this country. When the lockdown was announced on the 24th of March, within the first week, we saw a deep sense of helplessness seeping into the community of women that we work with. They lost their source of earning overnight. The clients disappeared because many of them are from the migrant communities. People, whoever could leave their station of work and go back home, did so. The women having no income overnight were rendered completely helpless. They had no money to buy food, they had no money to pay for their room rent or pay for electricity, things that they have to do on a daily basis. And very, very few of them are financially smart enough to put aside a bit of money for the rainy days. The last such disaster in terms of what financial impact it had on the lives of women in prostitution was during demonetization. Some of them had some money saved away, and since very few of them have bank accounts, most of that money was held in currency. So obviously, when a currency note of 500 is made worthless, people lost whatever little they had saved for their rainy days. This was the second blow. This came in a way so much more powerful and so very incomprehensible that it literally took the carpet off from under their feet. They didn't know where they were standing anymore. Under normal circumstances, there are bargains and negotiations. Here, there is no business. For the first 1 week, New Light as a group that I represent, we were confounded with the challenge of bringing help to the community that we work with. We had no idea where we would be able to find the food from, where the money would come from, how we would deliver this relief to them. On day 6, I realized it was not time to sit back and just to think or to look for solutions. The solutions lay in going out and being with the people. Every single day that we were out delivering relief to this community and various others, we knew we were exposing all of us. I'm talking about a team of 15 people, young, middle-aged, and elder people, who were out there running around collecting relief material, listing out the beneficiaries, collecting information on them, and distributing the relief hampers. The hampers contained basically food for subsistence for 5 people for 2 weeks. And that's how we arrived after 3 or 4 weeks that we had already reached half a million meals to the people. But it didn't stop there. In our experience, there were other issues. What about people who were HIV positive? How could we get them their medication? How could we get them their nutritional support? How could we assist them in going to the places of work that they were already going to? Gradually, we started to explore more and more marginalized community because I started to get more appeals coming my way. How am I going to survive? This was their question for everybody. For a city of 20 million people, it was the deathly silence of Calcutta that stunned me. Being outside on the streets, I saw how empty it was, excepting for some people, some policemen in the kiosks, and maybe a lone bicyclist. There were no people. That is an experience in itself. It is terrifying because what sustains us as human society, I feel, is human contact. I have spoken to many elderly people living alone in their rooms. The sense of isolation, the sense of fear, the sense of desperation was unbelievable. Within the community, we also had to look after the children. How do you keep children in a lockdown situation? These are kids who are free. They know they are in a safe place. They want to go out there asking, why can't we go to school? Why can't our friends visit us? Why can't we go downstairs in the field and play? How do you explain the strength of something that is unseen? That's what this pandemic has done. It has instilled such a deep sense of fear and helplessness. It's destroying the very fabric of strength of our societies. It's just not India. This is the first time that the whole world is having a similar experience. But that is not to discount the fact that we might all be in the same storm, but we are definitely not in the same boat. Each of us, each group, subgroup, and larger communities have distinctive experiences dealing with this pandemic. We make a little shift to another community of people, the transgender people, who are normally so marginalized. They live under such stigma and isolation that the general people keep them at an arm's length, even under normal circumstances. They get by blessing newborn babies. When they go to a celebration in a family, they do a little dance and music, or else they are seen begging in the four-way crossings. And begging for what? Begging for small sums of money so that they can buy food. And with that, they support their entire communities. But as the lockdown was put in place, they were robbed of mobility. And obviously that resulted in total lack of livelihood. It's not a very respectable way to earn one's living by begging as it is. And for that to be robbed, what hope are you left with? This was a community that reached out to New Light, and through them, we were able to reach out to a larger community of transgender people. Both the women in prostitution and transgender communities have not been a part of the development discourse. Under normal circumstances, there's very little said or done to improve their condition, how they live, how their children access education, how they themselves access healthcare, how the primary data is collected, what shifts are happening within those smaller communities. There's very little work done on these things, on these groups. On top of that, at a time when the whole world is dealing with pandemic, they are further marginalized. This is a time when people are busy looking after themselves. There's very little attention being paid to these 3 million women and perhaps another 500,000 people who are transgender and not even listed. So these are communities that live in the shadows. We don't see them. Or maybe it's better to say we choose not to see them. There are some distinctive groups like Sahodari, which has been in operation since 2007. We also have Sappho for Justice in Calcutta. And there are a number of other groups. I have dear friends in Ronji Kasina and another scholar, Manavi, who are spearheading the movement of empowering transgender people. And when we use the word empowerment, it is not that they don't already have the power, but it is to bring a more equitable situation for them. So they can walk into any hospital and say, I am so-and-so, I need treatment. They can walk into any interview and compete on the same playing field and be evaluated purely on the basis of who they are, purely on the basis of what are their intrinsic qualities and not by what gender they proclaim to belong to or what they abandon. That's not something we need to concern ourselves too much with. So bringing help in the post-COVID-19 era to communities as marginalized as women in prostitution and transgender people, we need to change the entire discourse. I personally feel the first step should be when we have proper documentation. We have to get the numbers right. According to a Guardian article written by journalist Rachana Chakrabarti, she did try to reach out to the National Commission of Women, asking them, so what provisions are there for women in prostitution? There was no response. There was no response. So if the highest body in this country that's supposed to stand by women who are facing different difficulties, this was certainly a survival situation. And to be told that we have no response is utter irresponsibility. It would be the same with various other both state and central agencies, mechanisms of governance which have failed the marginalized communities. And they keep on failing these people consistently. It is not just 1 day or 2 days or a few days. It is done consistently. Many of these people don't have ration cards. So how are they going to access the ration through our PDS? They are not documented. Many of them don't have their documents of identity. As for the transgender people, when they go to the local administration and say, I am so and so, their names and their appearances don't match. So the Aadhaar card, which was probably taken 5 years ago, is completely different from who they are, who they appear to be today. So in that process, they get eliminated. It's a very, very complex situation. As I was mentioning, its first is to collect the data. Second is engagement. Are we engaging enough people from those communities to structure systems of systems that are sustainable? Structures of development that would allow them to participate in a way that they can decide what is good for them. I very, very seriously doubt that. Third would be outreach. We are talking about women in prostitution in big cities. I live in Kolkata, so I can talk about Kalighat, a few other places, Shunakati, which is the reputably or ill-reputably the largest red light district in Southeast Asia. But in this situation, we're not able to get the outreach, probably. What about the people in the villages? What about the innumerable rural communities which have fringe red light districts? What about the women who are engaged in flying sex work? We have no data. And unless we have that, how can we plan on an outreach where we would be able to bring everybody into the system? Let me make one thing clear. I am absolutely not in favor of legalizing prostitution. I do not consider it to be a viable solution in this country, considering what little control women already have over their lives. I am very doubtful that women in prostitution would be given that right and would be considered as women in a particular profession that they choose to be in, were we to legalize prostitution. I'm afraid if we legalize prostitution, those cards, those documents of identification would further be owned by the brothel keepers, which we know it happens very often, or by male family members who would force their daughters or even the women or slightly older women in their families to go into prostitution, saying it's a legal thing to do. India as a society, I feel, is still not ready to deal with prostitution as a socially acceptable profession. And it would be a grave mistake to think that legalizing prostitution in this country would solve the problems that we see that are associated with this marginalized community. In 2000, according to the 2011 census, we know there was 5 lakh individuals who were documented as transgender. And from then to now, we don't even know where the number has gone. As for women in prostitution, we have seen in 2011, census said it was 121 crores. From there to now, the estimated number is 137 crores. So 121 to 137, that's 16 additional crores are there in prostitution. It's an incomprehensible number. and it has increased consistently in the decade between 2001 and 2011. Thankfully, between 2011 and now, even though the number shows much bigger, but the rate of increase has been contained. It has slowed down considerably. So that is one thing we all can be very, very, and those of us who are acting in the field can be really very, we can feel positive about it. Not happy, but positive about it. Because we would be happier the day people like us, are put out of our jobs, that we don't have to look after communities, not really look after in the sense that, we are not their guardians, but who are committed to do something, to bring about some change in their lives, that we are put out of our jobs, that these communities are empowered enough and they begin to live more equitable lives, that their children have access, like all other children in society at large. It's a very complex field. When we began the COVID relief work, we also saw other groups who were not given nothing special was structured for them. Neither the state government nor the central government came forward with any schemes, any offerings, or any structures to support these people. It's not their fault that they are caught in this terrible situation. This is not something that they brought upon themselves. Just as we are talking about other people getting support, these communities need to be supported. And it is the responsibility of those who are in governance, those who are in decision-making processes or structures, for them to raise the voice and talk about getting help to the marginalized community. These communities themselves have such little representation that they just can't get up and say, oh, this is what we need. And all of these fringe communities have very distinctive needs. The characteristics differ. The modus operandi differs. So those are the things that need to be kept in mind and slowly, brought into a system where people feel that they are included. As it is with the pandemic, people are feeling completely isolated and depressed with what's going on around them. The additional danger of these women will be when things loosen up a bit, or we cannot hope for things to come back to normal or the normal that we used to know before. That's not going to happen till such time that we have an established treatment protocol or we have the vaccine. And that we can look forward to for the next almost 2 years. I would not be optimistic enough to say that we would have a solution to this prior to maybe the end of 2021 almost. So when that happens, or even before that, when people are allowed to move a little more freely, every time a woman in prostitution takes on a client, she's actually exposing herself to this deadly disease. This is not like HIV. HIV can be transmitted or can come into somebody's body only through a certain set way. Here, nobody knows, and no amount of precaution can actually keep you protected. So with every encounter with the client, which they have to do per force, because that's survival, they are risking their lives. Just as they are risking their lives, so are they risking the lives of their children and other elderly dependents. We have tried to bring some kind of relief through counseling, through group interactions, while maintaining social distancing. It is important to stand by these people. And I'm really thankful to the Bhopal School of Social Sciences for having picked up on the issues of governance and development issues related to these very distinctive marginalized communities. For the last 20 years, I have worked with women in prostitution and their children. I have seen extraordinary achievements, unbound hope, and aspirations to touch the sky. We cannot at this point let this pandemic destroy all of that. It takes an entire generation of people who are educated, who are healthy, who know what the outside world looks like, to change things from the inside. And I'm so very happy to share with you that the major bulk of the relief work was done by the young people from the community. Young kids who were educated under the banner of New Light are today the young adults moving this entire relief work. It's time for outsiders like us to step back, and that's a tremendous gift, that people can take their decision-making process and decide on what would be their course of life. So I, once again, thank everybody at the BSSS for giving me this incredible opportunity to speak to so many of you and to bring just a tiny bit of my experience of having worked with the women in prostitution and the transgender community that lives in various pockets of Calcutta and some other parts of this country. Thank you. I would be most willing to take some questions if you have any, or to elaborate on other things as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Urmi Madam, for this wonderful and enlightening speech. Yeah, I hope I am visible now. So I would first like to extend kindly mute your audio. Those who are still, those who have still not muted. Yeah. So thank you, madam. This was really an enlightening speech. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. So it was really nice to really listen in the entire journey and why this particular initiative that you have been doing, and it was really wonderful for all of us to really know what exactly government has done during the your organization has done during this lockdown period, and not only that, but it also provided us a very larger perspective from the marginalized sections point of view as to why such work is really necessary. And I am very positive that you all really appreciate this. And we can only hope and pray that you continue your work with even greater enthusiasm and zeal, so that the humanity is served better. So thanks for this speech, and now I have some few questions, and if you permit, then I would like to ask a few questions on behalf of some of the participants who have posted their questions in the chat box. May I begin, ma'am?
Yes. Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So, ma'am, a participant from Gujarat is asking about what is your opinion regarding the term that we articulate as women in prostitution?
Mhm.
Which one is better, women in prostitution or women sex worker or sex professional? What would be
Okay.
your take on that?
So when we say sex workers, it establishes that we accept them as part of the workforce. So it is like women sex workers would be more relevant in a context when we have already, recognized them as an organized work set. Whereas when we say women in prostitution, it is it's one a step further way of being politically correct than calling somebody a prostitute. And women in prostitution. So there is a system, there is a mechanism that is working behind that situation, and she is actually, in most cases, working for somebody, so who's benefiting from her actions.
Okay, right. In case there is a day that government really approves the licensing of the women sex workers, would there be any provision or provisions for that matter that you think would be or should be there?
See, the demands are pretty simple, that they should have document identification, they should be able to access proper health care, they should be able to go to police station to lodge a complaint. I am kind of taking a very simplistic view of a situation and trying to present it like a layperson. I would want, when we talk about what provisions should be there, these are the very basic provisions. And we have so far not been able to guarantee these for the lay person in the streets today. How miserably this country has failed its backbone, the migrant laborers. Why were not they brought back and reunited with their place of origin? Why did it take so much misery, so much suffering, and so much humiliation, so much degradation of human beings, of citizens of a free country? Do you think this society is going to provide things to women in prostitution just because it is on a card? That would be in utopia.
Yes. Okay, that's great. I hope the query is answered. Ma'am, Navnita Sen from West Bengal writes that once Professor Kingsley Davis mentioned that the dual standard of morality in the society is primarily responsible for the emergence and spread of prostitution. She is insisting you to put your insight with this regard. What would you say?
I think if we look at prostitution per se, it's something that has existed for from the beginning of recorded human history. We don't know before that. It is. It's. I don't think women who are sold and bought and forced into this have any even idea or the autonomy to consider any framework of morality, and people who benefit from that, they obviously are not considering morality. And I am nobody's moral guardian. I would not stop any woman from doing whatever she wants if she does it of her free will and volition. I am all for freedom and autonomy. I am not trying to protect women who have decided to become a prostitute or to convince them to do otherwise. My fight is against the situation or system that forces women to do so or robs them of the autonomy or tools of autonomy that forces them into such situations.
Okay. Okay. Ma'am, one of the participants from southern part of India would like to know the current situation in the Kalighat red light district. How would you describe the current situation over there?
See, the Kalighat red light district is a very, very unique location. It's just across the street from the Kali temple, the greatest shrine of Devi, of Shakti, and it is also just across the street from Mother Teresa's Home for the Dying Destitute. And Mother Teresa's Home for the Dying Destitute and the Kali temple actually share a wall. So for this red light district to come up, just just across the street, there's definitive historical background to that. So with the practice of sati and many young women, young widows who were ousted from their families because other members of the family wanted to take their wife, they were all abandoned around Kalighat with the idea that they would be looked after at the temple, and they would get alms and food at the temple, and they would contribute their labor in doing, making the garlands and keeping the place clean. Yeah. And obviously, as time went by, there was this set of women who had no family to call their own, or who were technically, like in the Indian social system definition, when you're a widow, you're worse than I think even the vultures don't touch you, something like that.
Okay.
So over a period of time, people found that there was this group of women who were, they didn't say we are available, they were branded as available. And it is again to go back and say it's the male I or dominance or patriarchy that feeds this whole system.
Right. So I think this is going to be the last question now, and the participant from Bhopal School of Social Sciences would like to know, ma'am, what exactly are you doing in collaboration with the West Bengal government or the local Kolkata local urban bodies? What kind of cooperation do you really get, or you don't get at all, whatever is the situation? So what is your experience in dealing with the local administration and the state government over there?
I have been running this project for the last 20 years. This is our 20th year. So for the first 12, you can say I also experienced the previous government. The CPM government, yes, the left government. Right up to its closing time. And all through that period, people have just let me be. Nobody has come and bothered me. Nobody has said that you can't do this. Neither that government nor this. Till date, I have not paid 5 rupees to anybody as collection or for me to be allowed to work there. I have received extensive cooperation from the police, our local Kalighat police station, Hare Street, Khidirpur, Bau Bazar, including Lal Bazar and Bhavani Bhavan, the missing squad, the department that deals primarily to do anti-trafficking work, Whenever we have approached them, we have got tremendous support. And what I take away from that support is that every individual on his or her own wants to do good and wants to be of some value. It's not the system. We corrupt the system. I have never gone to any authority asking for special favors, and I have never offered money by way of bribe. I shall not. The same thing goes to the judiciary. Whenever we have had a case, whether it is presenting somebody at the Child Welfare Committee or Juvenile Justice Board, or even in the court, when a 164 procedure is done, the kind of cooperation we have received is highly appreciated. We have not taken any money anywhere from the central government or from the local government. So obviously that leaves New Light as a group outside of falling into the, into the system of saying yes always. I'm somebody that is not easily forced to say yes always. And I hope my next generation of leaders of this organization can carry this forward.
That's very good. That's very nice to hear from you. So with this, I formally, if there is no other question, if any participant has, then they can ask right now. Otherwise, with this question, we close this question and answer round formally. And it is again my honor and privilege to really say a big thank you to Madam Urmi for being here with us, for joining us for this speech, which has definitely enlightened all of us here, not only at the Bhopal School of Social Sciences, but to all the social work departments, students and faculties and scholars and thinkers who have joined from their home and from their homeland to this particular live session of yours. Madam, thank you very much again, and we hope to continue the relationship with you, the professional relationship with you, and we would like to have you on board again and over again for many more such gatherings. Thank you, Madam. And with this, we now welcome our new speaker who has already joined here, all of us, Dr. David H. Moult, Professor Emeritus of Media and Arts Studies at Ohio University. Sir, we are very glad to have you here. Good morning to you. And good morning to the rest of Ohio.
Good morning to you. I was being very correct there, and I had my microphone muted. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you're audible.
Very good, okay. Well, good morning to everybody, and I'm happy to join you. I was listening to a little bit of the last presentation and some of the questions there. I thank the presenter for a very serious presentation, and I think she pointed to some of the real challenges we face as professionals in social work or communication in reaching marginalized populations. So thank you for the presentation.
Right, sir. You're right very much. And let me formally introduce you to our audience. And we are right now live streaming this particular webinar through our YouTube channel, that is Rhythm VSSS. For all those who don't know about our channel, they should know that the Bhopal School of Social Sciences has a dedicated on-campus radio, Rhythm Radio, and we have a YouTube channel, Rhythm VSSS. And on this channel, you can frequently find the live streams of such kind. And whatever your feedback is, comments are, you can always share with us by posting your comments that YouTube comment section. Although the queries and comments that you post over there are not entertained for the queries and questions with the expert speaker. But anyway, for whatever else feedback and comments are there, you can always post in there. Let me take this honor and pride to introduce Professor David H. Moult to all of you. Professor David H. Moult holds a PhD, is Professor Emeritus Media Arts and Studies at Ohio University currently. He is leading a team that is working for UNICEF Bangladesh to help university faculty develop curricula and research capacity in communication for development. Communication for development is his core area of expertise. From 2011 onwards, he directed a global training course on C4D, that is Communication for Development for UNICEF. 100 staff members completing online modules and a 2-week workshop. He also works as a journalism and media trainer and a freelance writer. He is the author of 2 books on travel, history, and culture. That is Postcard from Stanland, Journeys in Central Asia, Ohio University Press 2016, and Monsoon Postcards, Indian Ocean Journeys, Ohio University Press 2019. And you can also see that Monsoon Postcard as his signature on the Google link. He was a Fulbright senior scholar in journalism and mass communication in Kazakhstan 2011 and Kyrgyzstan 1996 to 1997. Has had a teaching fellowship in Russia and was a faculty member for the University of Pittsburgh semester at C program in 2002. From 2002 to 2005, he served as director of Ohio University's master's program in communication and development studies, and from 2005 to 2010 as associate dean for research and graduate studies in the Scripps College of Communication. From 2007 to 2012, he worked on Sea Change, a US aid-funded project to build capacity in social and behavioral change communication with projects in several sub-Saharan African countries. From 2006 to 8, he directed a $248,000 ECA-funded program to improve reporting by Indonesian TV journalists on conflict and ethnic and cultural issues. In 2010, he served as administrative director for the study of the United States Institute on Journalism and Media. He has conducted training workshops for international and US government agencies and contractors, including UNICEF, UNESCO, USAID, IREX, USIS, Asia Pacific Institute for Broadcasting and Development, and Open Society Institute in Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Mongolia, Malaysia, Thailand, Cambodia, Indonesia, India, the Maldives, Nepal, Pakistan, Russia, South Africa, Malawi, and other countries. Topics include communication for development, journalism, curriculum development, training of trainers, environment, journalism, reporting on social and human development issues, legal and ethical issues for journalists on curriculum development, training of trainers, environmental journalism, reporting on social and human development issues, and legal and ethical issues. His research interests are in post-Soviet media in Central Asia, on early 20th century news and documentary film and politics and media. A former newspaper reporter and TV news assignment editor and producer, he continues to work as a freelance journalist as well. So not only, sir, he is an academic, but has a vast experience of practicing journalism, especially in the development domain. Sir, we are really honored to have you among us. And the stage is all yours. Please carry on with your speech.
Well, thank you. That was an exhausting introduction, and I thank you for it. I should tell the participants that I sent Rutwick about a 3-sentence introduction, but he chose to read my whole biography there, which I think makes me feel very old anyway. So, can I ask Robin to pull up the PowerPoint, which I'll be presenting from? And as he does, I just want to notice a couple of things. I mean, it's early in the morning here in the United States, and after I wake up, I kind of look at the news. I'm looking at my BBC News feed here, which tells me that India has now the third highest caseload in the world of COVID-19, according to the health ministry. It's overtaken Russia. And I throw that statistic out there because I think, this is not good news, of course. The United States has most infections. Brazil has second. India now third. But I guess I want people to think about the issue of scale. Okay, if you look at this as a proportion of population, actually India's caseload is much lower than other countries. Now, that may partly be a result of lack of testing there. But, one of the issues I think we need to consider, and I'm a media person here, in all of this is the role of the media in setting our agenda. And I will say a little bit more about that later. But simply India finishing number 3, okay, in the world, okay, it's not a matter of pride for anybody, but you have to put this into context, okay? Look at the population of India, 1.3 billion, okay? There was a very interesting map from The Economist a few years ago, which compared the populations of Indian states to those of countries. So the proposal made was that if Uttar Pradesh, UP, declared independence today, it would be the 4th or 5th largest country in population in the world. So terrible though this is, we need to get our statistics and our numbers in perspective. And I guess that's just one thing I wanted to mention. And the other thing I wanted to mention, I was reading this yesterday, this is not in my PowerPoint, but I'm just trying to keep up with things. The announcement by the Medical Council of India of the August the 15th deadline for a vaccine. And a number of Indian scientists today have said that this is quite unrealistic, a lot of other scientists across the world. So I think it gets us to think a little bit here about how the COVID-19 virus and the response to it has become politicized. Okay, every Indian knows the significance of the date of August the 15th in terms of history. So I think it's when we think about this virus, we also have to think about the context in which it is presented to us. And as I say, I'm not an epidemiologist, I'm not a medical expert, I'm a communications person, and I look at the messages that we receive and how we receive them. So a couple of things to think about there. Okay, India may have the 3rd largest number of cases in the world. That's bad, but let's put it in perspective in terms of the population. And has the government of Narendra Modi set a completely unrealistic deadline here in terms of an August the 15th date for vaccines? So again, look at the context there. So thank you, Robin, for getting this up. And why don't you go to the slide here? All right, these things take a little time to. There we go. Okay, can you? Yeah, thank you. All right. Okay, that's our topic there, and I'm going to try to make a few suggestions as we go as to practical responses to this. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is what we're going to cover today. What's risk communication? What are its goals? We'll look at some behavior change theories. And I think looking at how people behave, what makes them behave, what influences their decisions is really, really important in terms of designing interventions which are going to change their behavior. We'll look at a couple of examples of models or theories there, and we'll talk a little bit about what role that people in the social work arena can play. Next slide, please. Okay, and all right, you can read that. Yeah, it'll be easier if you post your questions in the chat box. So next slide, please. Okay, so here's a question. Okay, and I think it's a question we should all consider. We all face risks in our lives on a daily basis. You know? Risks from traffic accidents, you know, risks from other diseases. Why do we perceive, or why do some people perceive the risks from COVID-19 to be less than those from another thing that could threaten our lives? So, I mean, I use the examples of, you know, cyclone or flooding or another disease, cholera, malaria. Now, we kind of all know those are things that can kill us, but do we look at them differently from the way that we look at COVID-19? I mean, I've been working in Bangladesh recently, and I mean the same scenario would apply to coastal regions of India, Odisha, etc., West Bengal. Everybody knows what to do when the cyclone comes. Okay, they have their procedures down. They know where to go. The warning systems are in place. People behave in the most, not everybody, but many people behave in the way that they should behave. So, why are they not behaving in the way they should behave in response to the virus? Why are people not wearing masks? Why are people not washing their hands? Why are people not social distancing? Now, it's there's some interesting issues here. I mean, especially in a country like India or in South Asia in general, you know, people are not washing their hands sometimes because water is not available. Okay, they are not social distancing because it's impossible in the crowded conditions in which they live. But I think it's kind of instructive here to think about different kinds of risks and emergencies and the way people react to them. If it's something that you can see, if the winds are blowing and the rain's coming down, you know what to do. But COVID-19 creeps up on you there. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. Oops, we have somebody else popping in. There we go. Okay, I don't know if we can get that one full screen here. The social ecological model. Rick, if there are any problems as we go along here, please kind of let me know. I'm going to sort of keep going here, but just I hope everybody's good.
Yeah,
okay.
Yes, sir. Good.
Okay. All right. Okay, so far. All right. Well, all right. Good. Okay. Okay. Let's recognize here that when people make decisions about really anything, any kind of behavior, including how they might respond to a virus such as this, they do not make those decisions in isolation. This is a pretty well-known model in the social sciences drawn from Bronfenbrenner's ecosystems model. But what it indicates here is that every behavior exists, every attitude exists within a kind of an ecosystem where there are influences at different levels. And so, you know, we make individual decisions based on our own experiences, based on our age or our gender, but we are influenced by kind of these concentric circles. The first one would be really family and friends. Okay? What our family and friends think and we may ask them for advice, that's important. Now, government health officials would like to think that they issue messages about behaviors and that people will follow those behaviors. That's a communications model that I think was pretty much destroyed by the 1960s or the 1970s. Every person reacts to different influences, and so and kind of filters their actions, their attitudes, their behaviors through different lenses. So simply getting a message from the Ministry of Health or from some other official does not mean that we're going to do what we are told to do. So there are these sort of concentric circles here. Families are kind of an interesting one. I think that family influences on people's behavior are much more important in some cultures than in others. In North American and in Northern European cultures, family is important, but it's certainly not as important as it is in many Asian cultures, many African cultures, and indeed Southern European cultures or South American cultures. So we need to consider the role of family. Then around that, there is a community. Okay, there are people in the community who we trust. And the community may be a physical community, a neighborhood, or a village in which we live. It could be a virtual community, our Facebook friends, okay, or our Instagram friends. Or it could be a work community, such as School of Social Sciences, the Multiplier School of Social Sciences, the people you work with. And then around that, then there are other organizations. There are political parties, there are religious organizations, and kind of at the top of all of this is, the laws of the country and, regulations, government policy and budgets. So what I want to say here is that our response and our assessment of risk to COVID-19 has to be considered within this very, very broad context. And it's sort of a little easy and simplistic to say, oh, well, people make their own decisions or their families influences as well. I mean, there are interactions at these levels, which makes communication and interventions quite complicated. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, so that kind of summarizes it here. So at the interpersonal level, we have, informal family members, neighbors and friends. It can be virtual, community level, organizational level, religious groups, and okay, other people coming in here. Okay, that PowerPoint is popping all over my screen. Then we have things at the national level as well. So it's really important that messaging is consistent, that what people are hearing from their friends and family is also what they're hearing in the community, and it's also what religious leaders and people in government are saying. Because if we have conflicting messages, then people get confused, they don't know what to do, or worse still, they may do nothing at all. So consistent messaging across all of that is important. That's a challenge in every culture, particularly in the United States now, where we have all sorts of people saying giving all sorts of different messages, and a lot of people are simply confused. Do you wear masks? Do you not wear masks? Is it okay to be close to somebody in a certain situation? Should you hold a religious service or not a religious service? Should you hold a big political rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma, as the president did, with no social distancing? I mean, there's a lot of confusing messages coming out, and I think that is why, one of the reasons why, the United States has now been having around 50,000 new cases per day. Okay, so next slide, please. As I said before, traditionally, experts, government officials believed that they could simply communicate information to people and people would act on it. And all communication research has shown that it's a much more complex picture than that, with people reacting to different influences at different levels of that social ecological model. One important point here, I think, is that experts and the public have different perceptions of the same risk. So if you're talking to epidemiologists and health officials and government officials, they're looking at questions such as, what is the infection rate? How many people are have to go to hospital? What is the death rate? At an individual level or family level, you're concerned about yourself and your family members and your neighbors. So you're not too concerned about, mortality rates or morbidity rates. You're concerned about what's happening to yourself, your family, your friends in your community. Now, the other point I want to kind of make here is that, as I say, people obtain their advice on all kinds of behavior, including health behavior, from various sources. They don't just get it from official medical sources. All sorts of research has shown that when somebody gets sick, the person they usually talk to is a family member, usually a mother, sometimes a mother-in-law. Now, there's another question here about trust, and this is really where it comes down to. How much trust is there in official bodies, in government bodies, in experts? If we do not trust our government at whatever level, at the federal or state level, or local level, if we do not trust them on other issues, on what they're doing with the economy, on public safety, or whatever issue, are we going to trust them on health issues such as COVID-19? So the amount of trust that people generally have in government, I think, is significant there. I think there's also a cultural issue here. In the United States, there's a long-standing distrust of government and resistance to government, which I think has come out in responses to the virus here. In other countries, such as South Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, Japan, people are much more prepared to do what the government tells them to do. I mean, there's a whole cultural difference that I think exists, and I'm not going to make any judgments on trust in government in India. I've read enough about that, and you can make some of your own conclusions about that. So next slide, please. Okay. These are some of the results that have come out of studies of people's response to risk. And I think these are pretty good guidelines. And when we think about how people in social work can go out and respond, I think these might be helpful to think about. First, you have to show that you care, okay? Coming in with a lot of knowledge about something doesn't usually mean effective communication. So building empathy, building a relationship, I think is really important. People have difficulty hearing, understanding, remembering information. We have to remember here that, especially in a country like India, we are often dealing with low literacy, or we may be dealing with low literacy populations. So it's not as if we're all talking to each other here as academics or students. Some people have difficulty reading and writing, and therefore understanding information. People often focus on what they hear first, and they focus more on the negative than the positive. So thinking about how people may receive communication, I think, is really, really important. Building empathy is, I mean, and anybody who's done any field work research knows that the first thing you have to do when you go into a community is to start to build a relationship with people. Well, the same here. Maybe there's a crisis going on. This is a crisis, but still, if you're not trusted, then, and you've not built that relationship, it's unlikely that you will be as effective as you can. Okay, next slide, please. All right. These are some of the goals of risk communication, and I'm just going to kind of really underline the bottom part here, the bottom line. We need to think about the context here, okay? As I said earlier, all messages tend to be filtered through different lenses here, and not everybody will receive the same message in the same way. So depending on what your social or economic status is, your education level, your religious belief, you will perceive the same message or the same behavior in different ways. Next slide, please. All right. I think this is quite interesting in terms of how we assess risk, okay? Or our perception of the level of risk. So the first question to ask is this something unfamiliar or something new? So, you know, malaria is a familiar disease, okay? COVID-19 is a new disease. Do we perceive one as more threatening than the other, because one is new and the other is familiar? There's also the issue, I don't think this really applies here, although it could apply when a vaccine is developed. I mean, around the world, there's resistance for various reasons to vaccines, you know, which has had tragic health results there. Will people, when the vaccine comes out, whether it comes out from Indian scientists or from anybody else, will they trust the vaccine or will they resist the vaccine? So, you know, vaccines come with risks, certainly. People are also concerned about whether a health risk will affect future generations. And I mean, this is the one that where I compare it to the cyclone or flooding. Can you see the risk? Okay. Can you see COVID-19 creeping up on you and getting you? No, you can't. Okay. You can see a cyclone. You can see a flood. Is it catastrophic? Does it lead to death, disability? Is it unfair in its distribution of harm? I.e., are some groups in society affected more than others? And all the research in the United States so far has shown that African Americans in particular Hispanics to some degree, are disproportionately affected by COVID-19, and partly it has to do with, well, to a great degree, it has to do with some existing health issues, but also with poverty and access to health services. So think about which, in an Indian context, which of those factors I've listed, the 6 there, might apply to COVID-19. As I say, why don't you compare it with other diseases? Because, COVID-19 is killing a lot of people, but malaria is going to kill a lot of people. Dengue fever will kill a lot of people. Next slide, please. Okay, this is, I'm not going to throw too much theory at you today, but I'm an academic, so I can throw a bit. This is something called the health belief model, and I think it's pretty useful in assessing how people perceive their risk. So, perceived susceptibility, it's not just I believe this is a big risk or a moderate risk or a small risk. People break it down in different ways, and there's 5, 6 there's really sort of 4 categories here. Perceived susceptibility, okay? How likely am I to get this, okay? If you don't think you're likely to get it, well, you know, your behavior will be different from somebody who thinks they might. Now, I happen to live in a fairly rural area of the United States in a small city. I don't live in New York City, I don't live in Los Angeles, I don't live in San Francisco, I don't live in a place where people are crowded together. So, you know, probably my susceptibility to the disease is lower than it would be for somebody of my age and health condition who lived in an apartment in New York City. Perceived severity is another one. Okay, so you can accept that, you know, you may or may not be susceptible, but if this happens, how serious is it going to be? Now, that's a different, I'll just speak personally, that's a different equation for me, because I'm in a demographic group, an older demographic group, where, you know, people die every day from this disease. So I may not perceive that where I live I'm that susceptible, and my own behavior would not make me susceptible. On the other hand, if I get the disease, this is a big risk. I can, you know, it's going to be, you know, it could be fatal to me. Perceived benefits. So we need to recognize that things like
David sir, it's just within a minute it will be fixed. I think there is some little error with running of the slide. It will be there very soon.
Okay, that's right. But I'll just keep on talking. Okay, I'm an academic. I can just keep talking. I can fill. I can fill any time that's needed.
Any time, yeah. Of course, I'm sure. Sure.
Okay. All right. So when we look at something like the health belief model, we also have to think about you know, how this varies. Not everybody's going to look at their susceptibility in the same way, and not everybody's going to look at severity in the same way. So there are demographic. Thank you. There we go. Great. Okay. So there are demographic variables. Our class, our gender, our age, our education level, and, you know, psychological variables as well. So who we are, and again, coming back to that social ecological model, peer group pressures. You know, what do our family members say? What do our friends say? What do people in the community say? So it's complicated there, but I really kind of like this model because it sort of breaks down quite well how we think of risk. Okay, next model, please. Okay, all right. And this comes back to the point that I was making right at the beginning of this presentation. I mean, I'm a communications person, I'm a media person, and I think we all know that media do play a role in determining how people approach and their behavior in terms of risk. So, this is a gender setting theory, and we look at the interplay between the media agenda, or the media, mass media generally, although social media have a role in this, tell us we should be thinking about. And that has some influence on the public agenda, but also the public agenda has an influence on the media agenda, and then finally the policy agenda. This is what the government does or doesn't do. I'm particularly fascinated right now by the August the 15th deadline for a vaccine in India, and thinking about how the policy agenda is influencing the public agenda. So there's this interesting interplay of factors here with our personal experience, interpersonal communication coming in, and other factors there. So think about how what you read and what you watch on television, kind of reflects a public agenda or sets a public agenda, how the policymakers react to it, that sort of interaction between those. Next slide, please. All right. So here are a few kind of guidelines, and I kind of will try to bring it down now to what I think people in social work should be doing here. Trust is really the major currency here. Oh, what's the PowerPoint again? Oh, it's somewhere there. It keeps moving around my screen. Trust is the real currency here. I think there was a quote earlier from the World Health Organization. Trust is the real currency here. Without trust, you're not going to get changes in attitude or changes in behavior. But at the same time, there has to be transparency. If you don't trust a government agency, or you don't trust an expert here, then you're not going to be too effective. Announce early. As I said a few slides ago, people react to what they hear first, and so early announcements are going to have more effect than messages that come later on. Next slide, please. Respect public consideration. All right. We have to think of communication as a two-way process, as something that involves dialogue. And this is often where the public health experts fail. They are in a rush. They have a crisis. They have information to deliver, and they don't take the time, or do not feel they have the time, to sit down and listen to people's concerns. So they put out their brochures and their posters and their public service announcements, hoping people will take action. But without consultation, without listening to what people's concerns are, it's really, really difficult to make these messages effective. Plan in advance. This is not so much a reflection on COVID-19 as on other kind of regular risks and emergencies. So, for example, in Bangladesh, where I've worked recently, they know they're going to get flooded every year. There'll be cyclones every year. You can put out the messages that need to be put out. You can have those prepared in advance. You can have the messages on sanitation or how to avoid waterborne diseases put out in advance. You can have those ready to go because you know you're going to get those in advance. Okay, COVID-19, we didn't know it was coming. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, I'm just going to quickly go through these. This is the way in which people working in communication for development think about how behavior change can occur. And so this sort of reinforces what I was saying earlier about this ecosystem of social ecological model. So behavior change communication, there we look at the knowledge, attitudes, and practices of individual decisions. Social mobilization, and I think this is where social work students and practitioners come in. There we're looking at working with NGOs, civil society organizations, government partners to raise awareness of a particular issue. And a lot of development work is really about coordination between government, the NGO and CSO sector, and the private sector and individuals, getting people on the same page. So there's a role, I think, for social work professionals absolutely in social mobilization. And what social mobilization helps to do is it helps to establish what we call social norms, the kind of behavior that is expected in a society. And the wearing of masks is a good current example here. Okay? If you see somebody wearing a mask, do you think, oh, that person is doing the right thing and I should be wearing my mask, and why is that person over there not wearing a mask? Okay? It becomes, in some societies, I know in Japan and South Korea and Taiwan and so on, you see people walking around even before COVID-19 with masks, and it is not exceptional. Unfortunately, in the United States here, the whole mask issue has become politicized and has become an issue of personal freedom. I have the right not to wear a mask. Well, of course you do, but you may be endangering somebody else. So social mobilization and can make a certain behavior accepted in society, and then there will be peer pressure on other people to adopt it. Next one, please. Advocacy, that's at the government level, trying to get the government to do effective laws and regulations, and strengthening media capacity. So, I haven't been following media in India closely enough to make any even, anecdotal judgments on how media have been reported on COVID-19, but certainly, having worked for many years with journalists, I know that when they come to a new topic, especially one that's scientific, often training is needed. Next slide, please. Okay, so I just wanted to return to this one here to reinforce the point that decisions on risk are made within this broad system here where we have interpersonal influences, community influences, organizations, and government and society, and that the interplay between these levels is really what leads to both individual and collective action. And next slide. Okay, I think I'm going to leave it. this is actually a slide, and I don't know if Rick wants to share this with people, which sort of indicates how specific kinds of media can play a role in an emergency situation. So no point in reading this one here. I'm just going to let that one go. Go to the next slide. Right. So let me just input this again. So what can social workers do? Okay. Now, at a very informal level, you can talk with your family members, your neighbors, your friends, both in person or social media, about, what you can do to avoid, you're not going to develop a vaccine yourselves, but what you can do to reduce the spread or reduce the risk of the vaccine. At the community level, more formal social mobilization. So this is where, government, NGO, maybe the private sector work together. Organizational level, and the most important point here is that there is consistent messaging and communication, because that leads to what we call a multiplier effect. So if you're hearing the same message from your family and friends, you're hearing it from your neighbors in the community, you're hearing it from your religious leaders or political leaders, you're hearing it on, you're getting it on Facebook or Instagram or social media, then, that's much more likely to get an individual to adopt a certain behavior than the situation we have in certain places, including the United States right now, where there are so many conflicting messages and so many people either don't know what to do or they absolutely defy logic in what they're doing. Next slide. Thank you. Okay. Let me just add one little footnote here that is nothing to do with COVID-19. Rick, if you will permit me to do so, just a quick footnote. I'm actually speaking to you from a city in the United States in West Virginia called Charleston, West Virginia, which is a city where I've lived for the last 8 years. And many people in Bhopal may be familiar with the name because Charleston was the headquarters of the Union Carbide Corporation, whose factory in Bhopal suffered the disastrous gas explosion in 1984, which I think still haunts the city. So I haven't been to Bhopal. I hope to go someday, but I suppose I feel a little bit of a connection here. The Union Carbide plant here closed many years ago and was taken over by Dow Chemical, but I sort of the legacy of what happened in 1984, I think still is with some of the older members of the community, people who worked, some of my friends indeed, who I didn't live here at the time, but some of the people I've gotten to know in the last 7 or 8 years who live here, who used to work at the Union Carbide. So I just wanted to mention that connection. It's a kind of a historic one, but a tragic one. Okay, well, I will be really happy to take questions either in the chat box here or if Rick wants to read them to me. All right. Okay. All right. Okay. Rick, can you figure out which is the first question? Because I think some will relate to the previous presentation. Or
yes, sir.
Let's see.
Can you hear me?
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. So I have a few questions with me.
Okay.
those who have really asked, and many have have lauded this presentation. They're quite enjoying this. Thank you very much for this enlightening session. And first of all, this was a very academic session talk, and of course, and it really enlightened many of us who are interested in research also. So thank you very much at the very outset for this enlightening speech. Now, I will not be able to really allow the participants to come up and ask the questions because that may create a lot of hassle unnecessarily. So let me take this privilege to ask questions on behalf of people, all of the audience. May I go ahead, sir?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Sir, Dr. Ninad Jhala from Anand Institute of Social Work wants to know that what are your views as far as involvement of religious leaders is concerned in changing this whole game of controlling the current pandemic situations. Will it help or it won't? What is your take?
That's a very good question. And I mean, I'm going to give you a slightly facetious answer, and it says, it depends on what the religious leaders say. But you know, let us recognize that religious leaders are important. People listen to religious leaders not only on issues of religion, but on how to live their lives. Okay, broadly, you know. So I mean, in as much as most religions, Hinduism, Islam, not only have doctrines, but they have a set of values and a set of behaviors which are associated with the religion, then religious leaders are incredibly important, I think, in influencing people's opinion. I think at a time, and again, I can't really speak for India here, but I do know that in Bangladesh, I mean, at a time of crisis, okay, when there is an unknown risk, people will want to come together, okay? And I know in Bangladesh there were some huge religious gatherings at various times, which of course will have contributed to the spread of the disease. So it's a real challenge for religious leaders. People want to be together. They want to be together at the temple. They want to be together at the mosque. But, coming together is exactly what they should not be doing. So religious leaders have quite a challenge here in communicating to people what they should be doing, and it's very difficult for a priest or an imam to say, "Do not come to the temple, do not come to the mosque. Please pray at home." But I think it's a very good question there, and I think that we should be reaching out to religious leaders of all religions, recognizing that they have an influence there. At the same time, not all religious leaders will react the same, and therefore there has to be, I think, within each religious community some communication. So I again, senior religious leaders, shall we say, need to inform some, lower level religious leaders, about practices that they should not be following. And so, again, mass gatherings, mass religious services, which we've seen in, certainly seen in the United States, are, will contribute there. And so, big challenge for religious leaders, because we're asking them to tell people not to do what they usually tell them to do, which is come to the temple, come to the mosque, come to the
That's
church,
amazing.
you know.
Right. Yeah. So before I go to the next question, let me ask the question that came into my mind when you were discussing regarding the three types of agenda: public agenda, and media, and policy agenda. So, what exactly you were trying to say when you said that public agenda influences media and then policy agenda, or vice versa? Or what exactly is the kind of relationship that you see in terms of introducing that corona vaccine by 15th of August, which is quite unrealistic from your point of view? So what do you see, whether public agenda is influencing the policy agenda or what?
All of them are influencing all of the others. Okay, so let's start with policymakers. You know, let's start with your government. Okay, your BJP government. Okay, they are going to be responsive to public opinion polls. They're going to be, you know, they want to keep winning elections. They're responsive to, you know, issues here, and they faced a real challenge here with that. So, and you know, and to a great degree, to some degree, the public agenda, what people are concerned about, is reflected through the media. So the media is reporting, or the media reported after the lockdown, that millions of day laborers were stranded in Mumbai and Delhi and Chennai and every other city and could not get home to their villages. Okay, the media were reporting that. It was obvious on the public agenda that caused a problem for the government, okay, which is trying to balance the economy against public health. Now, at the same time, the government, you know, the policy agenda is trying to influence the public agenda and the media agenda. So the announcement that India would have a vaccine which had been fully trialed and fully developed by August the 15th, Independence Day, was clearly meant to attract media coverage, and it did. Okay. Now, so you know, there's a real interplay between these three. I mean, we can't say media agenda influences policy agenda, public agenda influences policy agenda. All three are kind of interplaying and influencing each other.
Okay, that's really insightful.
I'm sorry. It was a kind of muddy answer, a confusing answer, but it's not clear.
No, but many of us, in fact, for myself, this was really an insightful. This is really interesting to see how policy, media, and public agenda interplay with each other. Now, this takes me to another question. Mr. Umman Varghese, who is our faculty colleague here in the Department of Social Work, wants to know from you that what exactly has been your experiences using the health belief model in your research work. You just described that in one of the slides that certain variables are on the left side and certain variables are on the right side and here and there. And ultimately, they are affecting a particular dependent variable or something like that. What exactly do you really see? Have you really tested this model? Does it really work the same way everywhere? Or what are your experiences like employing this model?
I will be very straightforward with you here. I'm not a health communication researcher. I work with health communication researchers, and so, for example, some of my colleagues, in different countries, have used this model. Now, there are probably 30 or 40 different theories, okay, out there. I selected this one relating to health behaviors, why people change. I selected this one because I felt it was most appropriate to the study of how people assess risk. and the kind of the cost benefits of their behavior. So, but no, I'm not going to. I'm not going to claim I've done research on this. It's a well-tried model. It's the kind of model we teach all the time, together with stages of change, together with social learning theory and a bunch of other theories. You didn't want me to give you 30 theories in this presentation, I know that. So I will if you like. But you know, to me, it seemed that one and the agenda setting theory seemed to be two that kind of crystallized some points in terms of this. But no, my apologies to your colleague, I have not tested the health belief model myself, but I think if he was to go to the literature there, he would see it's been well tested in many countries. And of course, the second slide that I had there, which talked about the demographic variables and the psychographic variables, means that, you know, in each situation, in each country, susceptibility, severity, and the other factors there are going to be treated differently. So it's a model, but it's not, without sort of research put into it, it can't be predicted.
Okay, so now I think we are taking this question as a last one, formal questions from participant. One of the participants from Kolkata, West Bengal, would like to know that how exactly you see the world post COVID-19, especially the role of social workers in helping people. You can tell some of the experiences of US, she says.
Dear. Yeah, that's phew. I wish I had a crystal ball and could see into it. Okay, and let's not talk about the experience of the US here, because the US has been a disaster. I know that on many other issues, the US has provided good examples of best practices here, and certainly on COVID-19, there are places in the US where people are doing what they should be doing, and the infection rates have come down. But nationally, it's been a disaster. So I think we need to look at examples. I mean, I hope this is what this is going to happen. I'm not going to be able to completely answer this question, but let me tell you what I think is already happening right now. So we are trying to draw lessons from what is happening and the response to it in different countries amongst different groups. So I think you've seen some of the comparisons, what South Korea is doing, what some European countries have done. The problem here is that you cannot take what New Zealand has done, which is, or what Iceland has done, and say, oh, we're going to do that in India. Okay, these are different countries. You can't take one country, a country with a countries with pretty good health systems, all right, and impose on that.
Situations are different.
Yeah. So I think what we have to do here is we have to look at all of these variables, okay, demographic and country variables, and draw what we can from there. There's a very good discussion going on right now on a website called, I can send it to you, the Communication Initiative, www.comminit.com. And there's a whole COVID-19 discussion going on about what's happening in Ethiopia and what's happening in Nigeria and what's happening.
Would you please repeat the web address, sir? www.
Yeah, I'm just gonna. Well, yeah. Let me just. I can probably type it into the chat box here. Okay. Hang on, I've got to put my glasses on. I just put it into the chat box. I guess it's going to pop up there somewhere. COMMINIT.com, and I think if you look on the tab there, you'll find like a COVID-19 section. So these are not just communication scholars. These are social science, social scientists, and some epidemiologists all over the world exchanging experiences here. And I think what I hope will happen here is that out of all this, a body of knowledge will emerge, which will prepare us for the next virus, because this will not be the last one, and I don't know when.
Do you really think so?
Well, I mean, before SARS, we didn't have SARS, before Zika, COVID-19, yes. I mean, I think most epidemiologists who've studied this say they don't know when and they don't know where, but there will be another virus that will develop for which we have no vaccine, or maybe not. So yeah, I know it's a very kind of dystopian kind of view to take of the world here, but this could happen. We should not rule out that possibility.
Yeah, that possibility.
And next time we should be ready in terms of what to do. And I would imagine that a lot of the things, I mean, if we think about what happened with SARS in Asia in 2003, and MERS, I'm not so familiar with, and avian flu, I mean, some of the same social behaviors were required in terms of people wearing masks and social distancing and, some quarantining, all of that, and hand washing. So, what we need to do is we need to move to a world where these kinds of behaviors become more common, more acceptable to people, so that we don't have to have governments telling us do this, do that, when the next disease, the next virus hits.
What you call the resilient community.
People will adopt those behaviors. Again, I go back to my early example. When a cyclone comes or a flood comes, people know what to do. When a virus comes, we should know what to do too.
What to do too. Sure.
Whether it's called COVID-19 or something else.
Yeah, whatever. COVID-19 or David or David 20 or whatever.
Oh, please don't name a virus after me.
Sorry, sir. Just on a lighter note, I just said. Sir, thank you very much for this really insightful talk. And there are really no words to really express what we have gained from this session. And truly, honestly, with the full sincerity from the on behalf of the entire Department of Social Work here in at the Bhopal School of Social Sciences, I express a deep sense of gratitude for your presence and your delivery today. And we are not only grateful to have you here, but we are also very positive about our relationship in future. The way with which, with the ease with which you have really accepted our invitation and all, we are really grateful, sir. Thank you very much. We all aware that you are very always short of time. But with a short notice, at a very simple request, you entertained it. So we are extremely grateful for you for that. And this was a nice gesture from you, sir. Thank you very much. And
well, it was a great pleasure for me to participate. And let me thank all of the participants for hanging on here. I know it's a little difficult to hang on a webinar when you can't contribute, but thank you all for coming online here and participating. And I hope some of this, with myself and the previous presenter, will be useful to you. Thank you.
And we really hope that this will continue. We really hope to continue this dialogue through some of the other means. So thank you very much. Extremely from the deep of the depth of our heart, because let me also tell formally that we had offered a little bit amount to David sir, and as a token of our gratitude and love, but with his generosity and his greatness of his heart, he understands the academic situations very well, and that too particularly under this COVID-19, he has gratefully just deferred that. And thank you very much, sir, for being with us. And thank you very much to all the participants as well. I express a deep sense of thanks to our HOD, Mr. Abraham Varghese, our principal, Dr. Father John PJ as well. And we hope that this dialogue will continue. The second series of the same seminar will be hosted in the last week of this month, that is July, last week. And David sir, we will also be looking forward if you can join us over there also for a little discussion. That will be very nice.
Okay, well, let me see what the topic is, because I want to be intellectually honest about this. I'm not going to contribute on something I don't know anything about. So if the topic seems relevant to me, I'll be happy to contribute. If not, then I'll come in on a future discussion. Okay?
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks to all of you. And with these words, we formally end our session and webinar and live stream here. Thanks a lot. And a few announcements to be made. We have already circulated the feedback link in the chat box. You can fill it before you leave. And for the next half an hour, this link will also be displayed right here on your screen for the next 30 minutes. It will be displayed. Make sure that you fill that attendance cum feedback form before you log out from the session. I do not leave before filling out this link. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Bye. See you.
हाथ में हाथ से लिखा एक साझा किया है।